Hello, I'm Nathan Judah. I'm here with Wolves reporter Tim Spiers as we discuss the club's hierarchy. Let's start off with the main man in charge, and that is Kenny Jackett. End of season report on Kenny?
It's not been his finest hour, has it, this season? He's got a lot of mitigating factors in his favour, which is why he's still in the job. But some of his team selections have been bizarre. Some of his tactics have been very, very poor. We know the fans are unhappy with that. They're bored. It's Wolves' second lowest average attendance since this stadium was rebuilt, which I think is shocking, and a real sad indictment of the apathy around the club at the moment. And he's played his part in that. You've got to say. Substitutions, late and strange, is how you'd sum them up. But on the flip side, we know he has the final say on players, but he's not a manager in the old-fashioned sense. He's a head coach. He coaches the players. He, to all intents and purposes, gets given the players to coach from signings. Recruitment's been terrible. Last summer, only Connor Cody of the players they brought in played a substantial chunk of the season. The rest, Wallace, Byrne, Ojo and LaFondra on loan, didn't work out. Some really poor signings from Wolves last summer. That's not Kenny's fault. Injuries aren't his fault. That's the mitigating factor.
I mean, playing devil's advocate, let's talk about the injuries, because Wolves obviously want to really challenge and go into this Premier League. But could any manager whatsoever have got Wolves challenging this season with the amount of injuries and the amount of players that they've lost? So is it Kenny's fault, or do you feel like he's made mistakes, but they were going to end up mid-table regardless?
The injuries, with a club up for sale, are a huge factor in where this season's gone wrong for me, and it's not an excuse that Kenny will use, and it's not one that the fans want to hear really. But if you look at it, at the cold hard kind of facts of who they've lost at key times this season, it's been a huge factor, and that's why he gets a pass for this season, right? That's why he's still in the job. That's why he'll still be here at the start of next season. I'm absolutely convinced of that. And that's why we'll see what he can do next year. And I think personally he gets till October, and if they're not in the top six, then if they're not looking like they're going to be challenging for promotion, that might be the end of him personally. But he's got a lot of goodwill in the bank from his first 2 years at the club. Yeah. Record League One season. Really rejuvenated this place. It was on its knees.
Sure.
The manner he went about it, getting rid of all the high earners and the bad apples. Fantastic club. Completely rejuvenated. Carried that on in his second year. Nearly made the playoffs. Missed out on goal difference. Very unlucky. This season's been a disaster. It's been a write-off. But like I said, with the injuries and the poor recruitment, which for me are the two major factors why they weren't the top six.
Yeah.
Out of his control. That's why he gets free pass.
Of course, the massive news, with the season is the club being put up for sale, and came as a huge shock to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Blindsided.
At least to all us.
Yeah.
Jeez, I'll never forget it. 5:10 on the Monday after the Preston game. Club announcement. Morgan's put club for sale. Nobody saw that coming.
No.
Nobody. We had an interview in Express and Star magazine a couple of weeks earlier, in which he said, I haven't just had a heart transplant to Wolverhampton, I've had a whole body transplant. This is the kind of language he was using. He was in love with the place, really took the place to his heart, both the city and the club. Well, we've seen the building work he's done across the city. He was in it for the long haul. So for him to just back out,
he got stick. Like, we saw him get stick at Preston with some of the fans, but there must have been something that has been brewing for a while. That can't have just been a snapshot reaction, surely.
But we don't know, do we? Because he hasn't spoken. He hasn't said a word about it in public since putting this club up for sale, the club that he fell in love with, the club that he put millions into. Said he wants to leave, and he hasn't told anyone why. And it's very, very strange.
Frustrating for fans as well.
And God knows, we've tried to talk to him, but he just doesn't want to. Very frustrating for fans. This is their club, really. At the end of the day, of course it is. So very, very strange, and in a way, not just in a way, he has left Wolves in the lurch. Let's be honest, they're in limbo.
Do you see the club having new owners this time next year? Do you see this, obviously that they haven't had, or maybe had some interest, but nothing that's absolutely cemented? Or do you think that maybe they might have another U-turn and he might end up coming back?
My hunch has always been that that's the most likely thing, that he would turn around and say, no, do you know, I'm going to stay, at least in some capacity, maybe as a kind of major shareholder. And I think he'd win these fans over again. I think if you want your checklist of what your ideal owner is, it's a British guy with lots of money who loves football, right? You're going to get a Wolves fan? No, pretty unlikely. If they'd have been in charge already if there was one knocking around.
Sure.
So he ticks, and also he looks to the long term with youth. He's built up the academy. He's not just splashing the cash and putting the club in financial risk in the long term. So my point is he's the ideal owner, really. So if he turned around and said he wants to stay, I think there'll be a lot of annoyance at first, but I think the fans will get behind him. You have to say the longer it goes on, the more unlikely that is to happen. And as for when the club's going to be sold, it's very difficult to put a timescale on it. It's taken Villa years. We've seen what's happened with them. But I think the conditions that they're putting on the sale means it probably take longer than most fans would want it to.
And a prospective owner, or obviously Steve Morgan, who's still in the box seat. I mean, you look at the potential. I mean, it is, and we all know it. It's such a fantastic club, and it literally. They can go so high, can't they? They can aim so high, and this club deserves Premier League football.
And cheap.
Yeah, so cheap, yeah.
30 million quid.
Incredible, really.
Stadium's ready.
Yeah.
Ready to expand if needed. The academy's ready. They're mid-table in the Championship, so that's a decent kind of springboard to go from to the Premier League. Yeah, cheap, attractive, one club city with passionate fans, rich history. It's got it all. So yeah, you kind of wonder where the millionaires are really, and why there aren't more putting their hands up to come and take charge.
So let's fast forward 12 months. We're here, end of 2016-17 season. Where do you see Wolves? Do you see Kenny there? Do you see Steve Morgan there? Are we in the Championship? Are we in the Premier League? Are we in League One? What do you see?
I've got a hunch that they'll improve next year. If you take away the injuries and you bring in a few additions, I think they'll be nearer the top 6. But I don't see them getting promoted next season, with Newcastle and Villa, and in particular Norwich coming down. And then we'll see the teams that don't go up in the playoffs. You've got Brighton, you've got Derby, you've got either Hull or Sheffield Wednesday, all big spenders. You've got Bristol City, they'll be going for it next year. You've got Cardiff still knocking around. You've got Blues, Leeds and Huddersfield, etc. I think it's too competitive, and I don't think Wolves will be in the top 6 personally.
But the fans will need to see an improvement, and they'll need to see an improvement quickly, because this was toxic the last month or so of the season.
They are ready to blow.
Yeah.
Furious with Moxie, disillusioned with Jacket, disillusioned with Morgan. If they don't see improvements and a challenge for the top 6, then there'll have to be big changes across the whole board. Really, Wolves need a fresh start and a clean sweep of everybody if they can't get it right next year, because time is ticking, and the Premier League is where everything is at.
Yeah.
And if Wolves aren't looking like they're close to getting there, then the whole place needs a clean sweep putting through it.
Yeah, massive season for Wolves. Thanks, Tim, for joining us for these reviews, and make sure for all the latest Wolves news that you log on to expressandstar.com.